Over 60? Revealed. 4 shocking carbs to avoid and 4 incredible carbs for a transformation of life. Claudia stood at the counter, flour dusting her hands as the aroma of cinnamon and nutmeg wafted through her quaint Midwestern home. The golden light of autumn flooded through the window, casting a welcoming glow over the rolling hills outside. Yet, beneath her spirited demeanor lay a heaviness that had settled in her heart since the day she lost Harold. Each loaf of bread she baked felt like a reminder of the warmth that had once filled their kitchen, but now it felt more like a cloak of grief that suffocated her spirit. The cheerful chatter of her children drove the warmth deeper into her soul, but it also tightened the knot in her stomach. She felt trapped between honoring the family traditions that tethered her to the past and acknowledging the reality of her health, an ominous diagnosis looming just under the surface. The thought of diabetes sent a shiver through her, igniting a whirlwind of guilt. Claudia feared breaking away from the cherished recipes that were stitched into the very fabric of family love, yet with every sweet bite, she could feel her health slipping further away. Just when Claudia thought she could navigate this path alone, Frank appeared at her doorstep. A childhood friend and retired dietitian, Frank's passion for healthy eating was as bright as the sun filtering through the autumn leaves. As they sipped coffee on her porch, steam curling into the crisp air, Frank's enthusiasm began to peel back her layers of denial. When he brought up the 4 shocking carbs she needed to avoid, Claudia held her breath, her heart racing as he rattled off a list that could topple her culinary world. And then came the 4 incredible carbs that could restore her vitality, a series of lifelines she wasn't quite prepared to grasp. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As Claudia soaked in Frank's wisdom, she felt her heart flutter with a flicker of hope. Yet it was swiftly countered by a familiar fear, a clinging to her rituals that brought comfort. The thought of modifying her meals felt akin to erasing her family's history, a betrayal to the generations who had shared recipes over rickety tables. Approaching a family reunion was a devilish game of balance. Surrounded by her favorite dishes, the lasagna thick with layers of cheese, the pastries piled high with cream, Claudia stood paralyzed in uncertainty, torn between the familial joy each bite represented and the horrifying urgency of her own changing body. Would she be cast out from the love that language articulated through each lovingly prepared dish? The laughter and chatter of her family filled the room, yet she felt like a ghost, lingering at the edge, grappling with a decision that felt too heavy to even consider. And then, overwhelmed, the words tumbled from her lips, unbidden. What if I prioritize my health and lose you all in the process? Silence fell like a stone, penetrating laughter fading into quiet confusion, worry lining the faces of those she loved. The truth was an awkward weight pressing on her chest, and Claudia realized that this wasn't just about food, but about identity, about love, about what family meant. As she searched their eyes for understanding, hope flickered alongside despair, each heartbeat echoing the stakes of the decision she feared she might have to face alone. The room buzzed with tension, amplifying her struggle, and Claudia understood. She was at the edge of a precipice where choices would redefine her future, and the stakes had never felt so high. The silence in the room churned around Claudia, suffocating yet necessary. Her family's expressions slowly morphed from surprise to concern, their love carved deep with unspoken understanding. The fear that had gripped her heart now echoed loudly, resounding against the walls of her ancestors. She felt the weight of their stares as they processed her plea. It was as if she had not only opened a dialogue about her health, but also ripped a page from their collective memory. Claudia's hands trembled slightly, a betraying sign of the turmoil within. She stood poised at the intersection of tradition and transformation. The aromas of family recipes drifted around her, yet they felt like chains. They had once grounded her, but now they threatened to pull her under. She had long been the guardian of culinary nostalgia, the bearer of sweet memories embedded in each family dish. Yet as the reality of her health loomed, it transformed from an abstract idea to a tangible challenge. She recognized she had to forge her own path. As the reunion continued, Claudia devised a plan. Maybe I could create new recipes, she whispered to herself, testing the thought. Incorporate those incredible carbs Frank mentioned.
It felt like a rebellion of sorts, or perhaps a form of resurrection. The idea blossomed within her, a way to preserve tradition while also nurturing her health. She mentally scribbled out potential dishes that could blend both worlds, envisioning vibrant, healthful meals that still bore the essence of family gatherings. But how to reconcile this with her family? She faced another hurdle, the fear of judgment, the threat of dismissive remarks.
What did they expect of her now? Would a transformation betray their love? The prospect made her stomach tighten anew. These weren't just ingredients. They embodied years of shared experiences, each lasagna laced with laughter, each pastry imbued with the essence of holiday spirit. The thought of reinventing these dishes weighed heavily on her heart. That evening, beneath the vast night sky, Claudia sat alone on her porch. The stillness was almost deafening, her mind crowded with contemplation. Could her family handle the shift? Could she, on the other hand, handle their resistance? Each breath she took echoed her longing for approval while advocating for her health. The contrasts were stark: tradition versus change, love versus health. These binaries spun furiously in her mind. In that moment, Claudia discovered a hidden resilience. She'd known as a caretaker, a nurturer, but perhaps it was time to nurture herself just as fiercely, to make room for her voice at the table, not just as a keeper of traditions, but as an architect of a new narrative, one that honored the past while negotiating a future she could thrive in. In the quiet support of the stars hanging overhead, she gathered the threads of courage. "I can do this," she whispered into the night. The first step lay in the conversation she had to initiate, an unveiling of her new path to her family. She steeled herself for the possible pushback, but also envisioned their acceptance, their support. As dawn broke, Claudia felt the stirrings of determination gripping her. It was time to face both her family and herself. The following gathering would not just be another reunion, it would be a revelation. "And what if I'm wrong?" a voice taunted her from the back of her mind, but she quickly brushed it aside. The moment had come to face her choices. Whatever lay ahead, it was worth the risk for a healthier, more vibrant future. With her heart racing, she picked up her phone, ready to voice all she had withheld for too long. The next steps were clear, but what awaited her response? Would they embrace this shift, or would they retreat into the familiarity of their old traditions? As she dialed, uncertainty loomed like a shadow, promising to unveil truths she had yet to confront. Claudia felt the cool glass of her phone press against her ear, a thin barrier between her and the conversation she was about to unleash. Each tone of the dial that echoed in her head felt like a countdown. The voice in her mind that kept daring her to back down threatened to claw back at her resolve. It was as if the air stilled, waiting for the ensuing chaos. Then her mother's voice cut through, crisp and familiar, laden with the warmth of home, yet now tinged with concern. "Mama, I need to talk," Claudia said, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with uncertainty. The words tumbled out, revealing the enormity of her request. She could almost hear her mother's sharp intake of breath, the prelude to inevitable questions. The conversation became a battleground of emotions. "You know how I've been feeling," Claudia pressed on, words tumbling out in a fervent rush, "and I think it's finally time for me to change the way I cook and eat. I want to create dishes that are healthy, but still remind us of our family traditions." Quilted moments of silence stretched, both comforting and daunting, leaving her second-guessing her boldness. Her mother's response was a mixture of disbelief and fear. "But Claudia, our recipes are more than just food. They're part of us." A tremor in her mother's tone echoed back to the night spent on the porch, stirring the depths of Claudia's resolve. "Are you saying our traditions aren't enough?" Caught in the crossfire of family loyalty and personal growth, Claudia felt her heart rate spike. This was the crossroads she'd prepared for, yet the very air now felt like molasses, thick and resistant. "No, Mama, they are beautiful, and I cherish them." A hidden strength fortified her voice. "But I need them to evolve, for us to evolve. I want this for my health and for our future as a family." "You're just going to throw it all away?" her mother insisted, sadness threading her words. The question hung heavy, threatening to pull Claudia back into a narrative she had struggled to escape. It swirled around her, evoking images of family dinners where laughter accompanied every mouthful. Each dish carried a deep-rooted satisfaction that now tasted bittersweet. But Claudia refused to retreat. "I need to make room for new memories while holding on to what matters," she declared, her words solidifying into an unshakable foundation.
I want to share new recipes with you, meals that are vibrant and full of life. We can still gather. We'll just be gathering with a clearer purpose." Her mother hesitated, the silence puncturing through the emotional maelstrom swirling in Claudia's mind. For the first time, uncertainty transformed into an opportunity. In her mother's pause, Claudia saw the potential for change blooming, much like spring after a long winter. Pine needles underfoot cracked as she stepped cautiously through the complexities of their conversation. "Okay," her mother finally conceded, a tremor of hope breaking through the heaviness of their exchanges. "But promise me it won't mean forgetting our old recipes." That promise ignited something deeper within Claudia, a vision flush with possibilities. It was the dawning of an era. Her commitment symbolized more than culinary transformation. "I promise," she affirmed. As she ended the call, a newfound lightness enveloped her. However, a subtle unease lingered. It was far from over. The next family gathering loomed like an approaching storm. Would they embrace the changes, or would they cling to tradition as an anchor? Claudia set to work, jotting down ideas for the dishes she would present.
Her heart raced with excitement and trepidation, knowing that each scrumptious meal crafted would be entwined with her bold journey of self-assertion. Not every family member would be open to her newfound approach, and she could sense that looming hesitation. Trust would need to be rebuilt. As she mixed ingredients and tasted the flavors with newfound zeal, an indelible thought crept in. What if her most treasured family recipe, her lasagna, could also be a canvas for her evolution? The potential for resistance from her family remained a shadow, yet at that moment she sensed a powerful truth arising. "Mama is right," Claudia whispered to herself. "This journey is about more than just health. It's about creating a new canvas, one where tradition and innovation harmoniously coexist." But how would her family respond? And how would she confront any pushback that arrived at the dinner table? Little did she know, each bite served on that symbolic night would challenge her in ways she had yet to prepare for. As Claudia skimmed through her notes, visions of her family's expectant faces swirled in her mind like a chaotic inside joke no one wanted to be part of. Each potential recipe she penned felt like a small rebellion, an act of defiance against unspoken rules that had governed their meals for generations. Her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. That sense of unease solidified into a knot in her stomach as she recalled her mother's hesitant agreement. What if it wasn't enough? There was still the matter of her cousins, her uncle, the ever-critical eye of her grandmother. Would they be as open as her mother seemed to be? Every fiber of her being screamed for validation, yet she knew that couldn't be her focus. This journey was hers, and it required her to break out of the shell her family's traditions had created around her. She set up her kitchen like a battlefield, utensils sparkling under the fluorescent glow. Claudia gathered everything she needed, fresh vegetables, lean proteins, and spices that danced with zest. Each ingredient was a symbolic protest against stagnation, a commitment to the metamorphosis she desperately craved. Yet, lurking behind her enthusiasm, a voice whispered warnings, a reminder of all the times her confident plans had crumbled. Claudia washed and chopped, immersed in the rhythmic motion that normally brought her comfort. As she sautéed garlic, the rich aroma filled her senses, but it didn't overshadow the underlying tension. Her mind wandered to the different reactions she might face. Would her aunt raise an eyebrow at the absence of gluten? Would her grandmother's critique of too many vegetables crush her fledgling confidence? She could almost hear those weary sighs now, slicing through her carefully crafted perspective like a knife through dough. With each stir of the pot, Claudia ventured deeper into herself, unearthing realizations about her path. She understood that this gathering wasn't just about food. It was an uncharted territory, ripe with the potential for conflict and enlightenment. Her awareness sharpened. This was about more than just her own health. It was also an invitation for her family to join her in this rediscovery of what food could be, a mingling of past with present, tradition with aspiration. But with that insightful revelation came yet another layer of complexity. It wasn't enough to create these new dishes. She had to articulate why they mattered. Familiar faces would need context. They would cling to the echo of nostalgia even in the face of change. Would they see her new culinary hand as an encroachment or an enhancement? With renewed purpose, she lifted a spatula and began to craft her reinvented lasagna recipe, layering zucchini instead of pasta and using a vibrant tomato sauce blended with herbs. She envisioned the dish before her, colorful and inviting, yet daunting in its departure from familiarity. With every layer added, Claudia grappled with a dual sense of hope and dread. The kitchen filled with enticing scents, a preview of the meal she hoped would transform the conversation with her family. As she sprinkled cheese over the top, a revitalizing warmth surged within her.
This dish could embody her journey, showcasing her tenacious spirit while gently challenging her loved ones to reconsider long-held beliefs. However, a creeping doubt slinked alongside her enthusiasm. What if, despite all her care and effort, her family couldn't embrace her vision? How could she reconcile their emotional ties to the traditional recipes that had shaped their family legacy with her desire for transformation? The dinner table had always been a crucible for love and laughter, but now it felt like a stage for her crucible of conflict. As she pulled the lasagna from the oven, the cheese bubbling and golden brown, a question echoed loudly and defiantly in her mind. Could she stand her ground when the first forkful was met with bewilderment or rejection? As she plated her culinary creation, Claudia realized she was about to confront a reality she'd spent a lifetime navigating, the dissonance between family loyalty and individual growth. With the meal prepared, her heart thrummed with a tumultuous combination of hope and anxiety, ready to plunge into the depths of her family's reactions. Little did she realize the evening would unravel in a way that would challenge not just her culinary skills, but the very fabric of her identity. What awaited her beyond those doors? Acceptance? Resistance? Or something even more unpredictable? Claudia's heart pounded as she set the freshly plated lasagna onto the dining table, like a messenger bearing news. The room, richly adorned with familial artifacts and the scent of her culinary attempt, felt simultaneously comforting and suffocating. As she glanced around, familiar eyes met hers, some warm, others tinged with skepticism.
Each family member settled into their seats, and a subtle tension unfurled in the air, thick and palpable. For a moment she stood there, feeling like an imposter in her own home, the weight of the evening's uncertainty crashing around her. Would her family see this dish as a threat or a bridge? The table embodied their shared history, and tonight she was about to alter its landscape. It felt like standing at a crossroads where the past met the present, bearing the burden of expectations and hopeful dreams. As the first fork pierced her creation, time slowed. Claudia's breath stilled, each person's expression locked in a suspenseful freeze. She opened herself to the prospect of their reactions, but braced for the worst. The first bite taken from her cousin Ethan elicited a flurry of emotions. A mixture of anticipation, dread, and strange exhilaration swirled within her. "Interesting choice," he remarked, his brow furrowing slightly as he chewed. Claudia's heart plummeted like a stone, wondering if interest meant skepticism or genuine intrigue. She took a deep breath, trying to mask her unraveling composure. Clutching the edge of her chair, she remained silent, every second dragging, a taut string waiting to snap. Her grandmother then raised her fork, a faint glimmer of curiosity dancing behind her eyes. "This is different," she said, tilting her head slightly. Claudia's pulse quickened. Different could go either way. Claudia became hyper-aware of the interplay between each voice around her, each bite taken, as though they were all offering silent commentary on her very worth. Soon her mother spoke, her voice steady yet soft, a soothing anchor amid the whirlwind. "Claudia, what inspired you to make this?" Asking the question slowly, she made it an opening for Claudia to elaborate. Perhaps they weren't ready to embrace her ideas just yet, but at some level they were willing to engage with them. This could be the first ray of light piercing through doubt's dense fog. Claudia felt the knot in her stomach swirl into something different, a mix of pride and fear. It's a combination of trying to create something healthier while still being delicious. I thought about how we could refresh our family meals without losing our essence. With those words, a rush of vigor flooded her system, pushing the anxiety off the table, if only for a moment. Her boldness appeared to ripple across the table. Her uncle shifted in his seat, his critical gaze softening. But why not just stick to what we know? While it felt confrontational, the question inspired clarity within Claudia. It was a challenge she faced not just in the moment, but throughout her life, an ongoing dance with her identity and her family's deeply ingrained traditions. "Because what we know can sometimes hold us back," I replied, the words flowing more naturally than she expected. "I love our traditions, but I also believe food should evolve just like we do. There's no harm in exploring new flavors." The words tasted like liberation. As she surveyed the reactions around the table, a wary curiosity emerged. Her mother nodded, and for the first time, Claudia noticed her grandmother's lips twitching as though they might form a smile. Hope gleamed faintly on the horizon, yet the specter of rejection loomed still. Would their acceptance spring from understanding or merely curiosity? How could she continue to foster this initial engagement when every familial tie bore an unseen weight of expectation? What if her next recipe didn't hit the mark, and all she achieved through tonight's reconciliations slipped away, crashing back against the tide of tradition? This gathering had the potential to be a stepping stone or a stumble. She was starting to realize it wasn't merely about the food, but about reconciliation, of identity, aspiration, and family ties. The mountain ahead felt daunting, but perhaps with each meal she crafted, she could build a path through the uncertainty. As the last bit of lasagna vanished from sight, whispers filled the air, her family's words forming a blend of critiques and inquiries, hopes mingled with skepticism. That swirling conversation ignited an idea in her mind. This wasn't a single dinner, it was merely the beginning of an exploratory journey. "What else could we try then? I'm curious about this kind of food," her cousin Ethan asked, eyes sparkling with intrigue. The invitation hung in the air like ripe fruit, begging to be picked, unfurling infinite possibilities. Claudia realized her culinary adventure could lead to far deeper discussions, challenges, and self-reflection than she had dared to imagine. Yet even as her mind raced forward, one thing remained aching at the edge of her consciousness. How could she continue to grow while keeping the fabric of her family woven tightly around this newfound sense of self? The night had opened the first door. Little did they know, she was ready to open many more. As days passed after the family dinner, Claudia found herself caught in a rhythm of reflection and planning. The conversations initiated by her lasagna had created ripples of curiosity within her family, but the question lingered, were those ripples strong enough to carry the weight of change? The echoes of Ethan's intrigued voice played back in her mind, challenging her to take the next step. She dedicated the following weekend to experimenting, not just with recipes, but with her approach to cooking itself. In the solitude of her kitchen, Claudia could explore without the prying eyes of her family, battling her insecurities in the process. Flour dust swirled and danced against the backdrop of her newfound ambitions. As she sautéed fresh vegetables and fanned the aromas wafting up, something transformative happened. This wasn't merely cooking, it was a conversation with herself. Each diced onion represented a layer of her identity, each herb an aspect of her aspirations.
The act of creation felt grounding, a liberation she longed to share, yet hesitated to unleash upon her family. The still air in the kitchen resonated with memories of family meals, filled with laughter and familiar banter, but an underlying tension existed, one that hinted at division. Claudia pondered her own dinner table, where safety and tradition clashed with her yearning for growth and exploration. Could these two worlds coexist, or was she destined to carve her own path alone? A burst of inspiration struck her as she remembered the vibrant dishes she had enjoyed while traveling, flavors and textures vastly different from her family's Italian-rooted meals. The prospect of merging those experiences into something fresh began to take shape. Her heart raced. This was not just about food anymore. This was about infusing her familial relationships with new life. But as she flipped through her notes, a mix of innovative recipes and traditional elements, her mind conjured stubborn echoes of doubt. What if her family rejected these new dishes? Could she bear the idea of her culinary evolution being stifled by nostalgia? Embracing that fear was inevitable, yet she grappled with her commitment to growth. Determination surged within her, and for the first time she visualized a plan. Claudia decided to make this more than a simple twist on family recipes. She envisioned an event, a themed dinner to showcase the fusion of old and new. The excitement bubbled within, offering a thrilling rush that fought against the suffocating fears. As she crafted her invitation, she felt both nervous and exhilarated, knowing that they might see her presentation as a threat. Yet she held firm to the belief that every new taste could open doors previously locked. Soon the days raced past, and the evening of the dinner arrived. Claudia set the table meticulously, balancing tradition and vibrancy across every plate and glass. As she stepped back, her culinary creations gleamed. A colorful riff on the classics meant to pique interest. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, she whispered to herself, the culmination of her efforts resting delicately in her hands. It wasn't merely a meal, it was an assertion of her independence woven into the fabric of her family. But as she laid her eyes on the doorbell, her confidence wavered. Would they embrace this leap into the unknown, or would skepticism pull them back?
The question pounded against her resolve. The moment had come to face the possibility of resistance, an emotional gamble woven into her quest for personal development. As the first guests began to arrive, a mix of excitement and trepidation enveloped her. The night was about to unfold, carrying with it the weight of her evolution alongside the legacy of her family. Could she stand firm against any doubts they raised, or would she falter under the pressure of expectation? The door swung open, revealing familiar faces.
With every greeting, Claudia felt the stakes rising. Inside, she resolved it was time to express all she had learned, not just through food, but through courage. Each moment mattered. Each flavor carved deeper pathways in her journey. What awaited them on the dining table could either fortify her connections or test them in unexpected ways. And as she welcomed them, the kitchen felt alive, vibrating with the potential of what could unfold. The clatter of silverware echoed in the air, a stark contrast to the racing thoughts swirling in Claudia's mind. As her family settled around the table, she could feel the weight of their gazes, questioning yet curious. It was as if each of them held unspoken expectations, a mix of hope and skepticism that pushed against her resolve. She took a breath, summoning the courage to share what her heart had poured into the dishes before them. As the first course was served, a beet and walnut salad with a tangy citrus dressing, Claudia studied the expressions of her family. Her sister, Maria, raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback by the vibrant colors on her plate. Claudia's mother quickly followed suit with a hesitant smile, clearly unsure of what to expect from the unfamiliar combinations. The initial silence was deafening. Did they recognize this moment of vulnerability as she tested the waters of her culinary evolution? Interesting choice, Claude. Ethan finally broke the quiet, his eyes brightening as he took his first bite. It's refreshing. The genuine surprise in his tone filled her with a mix of elation and fear. Could the evening truly unfold with acceptance rather than resistance? Time slid along, minute by minute, with each course building on the last, amplifying her inner turmoil. Claudia presented her signature dish, a savory fusion of gnocchi infused with saffron and served with a spicy tomato sauce that veered from the norm her family held close. She had hesitated before revealing this personal recipe, knowing the inherent risk it carried. What if they resisted this change, pushing back against her ambitions? Her father's fork paused midway to his mouth, the gnocchi suspended in the air for a dramatic moment that felt endless. His brows knitted together in contemplation, silence stretching uncomfortably in the warm space of the kitchen. Claudia's heart raced. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown to acceptance or rejection. "It's different," he remarked slowly, searching for the right words. "But," he continued, a hint of uncertainty lingering, "it works." Relieved, Claudia felt a simultaneous rush of triumph and unease. It wasn't full-blown approval, but she sensed the foundation shifting, bricks of skepticism crumbling under the weight of new flavors. The night progressed in a series of small victories and deeper introspections. Claudia watched her family navigate the tastes, each reaction a puzzle piece to her self-discovery. They marveled at the unique spices, and some continued to express their disbelief. It was exhausting, yet exhilarating, the battle of pushing herself into uncharted territory while trying to draw her family into the same world. Every exchange deepened her understanding of their traditional mindsets. Some moments felt like brick walls, while others hinted at open doors. Yet a persistent internal conflict simmered within her. How could she uphold her identity as a daughter while embracing her individual journey? In the post-dinner haze, as laughter bubbled over and old tales shared warmth in the air, Claudia felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. She began to believe in a coexistence of nostalgia and innovation. The laughter, the teasing, even the pointed critiques were all part of the complex tapestry that tied them together. But as the evening drew to a close and the tables emptied, Claudia realized that her journey was far from complete. The weight of acceptance didn't rest solely on the reactions of those around her, but also on her ability to confront herself, her motivations and fears head-on. What did it truly mean to evolve within the framework of familial expectations? With that question echoing in her mind, she resolved to dig deeper. Tomorrow awaited her with fresh challenges. She needed to find a way to sustain this momentum without losing sight of her roots. The next step in her journey loomed large, a
a looming presence that ignited a fire within her, begging to be explored. Claudia closed her eyes, envisioning the future. Would they boldly embrace these changes together, or would she forever be a solitary phoenix rising from the ashes of tradition? The answers felt tantalizingly close, yet dauntingly out of reach. The night had been a beginning, and she knew that the real test of her culinary evolution and her family's acceptance was only just beginning. The sun rose with a gentle glow as Claudia woke, its warmth a stark contrast to the chilly shadows that lingered inside her. The previous night's dinner permeated her thoughts, an amalgamation of hope, fear, and determination simmering in her consciousness. She wasn't just battling expectations, she was embarking on a journey towards self-acceptance, one that could either uplift her or lead to a deeper sense of alienation. She poured herself a cup of coffee and positioned herself by the kitchen window, watching as the world outside began to stir. But instead of feeling motivated, an unsettling discomfort gripped her, a reminder that her culinary aspirations still existed within the constraints of her family's affection for tradition. The delicate balance between innovation and nostalgia weighed heavily, taunting her with questions she couldn't easily answer. What if her dishes continued to evoke skepticism rather than excitement? What if this newfound culinary voice clashed irreparably with my roots?
Determined not to dwell on doubt, she began jotting down ideas, curating a menu that intertwined modernity with familial heritage. Each dish would be a narrative, a bridge between the flavors of her upbringing and the creativity she craved to express. But ironically, in seeking to honor her family, she questioned if she was sacrificing her voice instead. Armed with a notebook, Claudia scrolled through her phone, looking for inspiration. She stumbled upon an upcoming local farmers market, an ideal place where fresh ingredients and community spirit mixed freely. With a deep breath, she marked the event on her calendar, feeling an invigorating pulse of anticipation outweighing her fears. Later that morning, she stood in front of her family, ready to discuss her plan to create a weekly family dinner featuring her new menu. Her heart thrummed in her chest, a rhythmic reminder of the risk she was about to take. As she pitched the idea, a mix of intrigue and concern plastered their faces. The hues of skepticism had returned, and she could see her father's guarded expression. The silent question of why change hovered in the air. It could be a chance to reconnect, she urged, her voice steadier than she felt. There's so much we can explore together. Her mother shifted in her seat, mouth opening before closing in contemplation. Claudia, you know how your father feels about tradition. Family traditions don't have to be stagnant, Claudia interjected, her frustration bubbling to the surface. Trying something new doesn't erase the past, it adds to it. Silence fell once more, punctuated only by the tick of the kitchen clock. Each kick felt like a countdown for Claudia, her mind racing with unspoken thoughts that vied for discussion. The moment encapsulated her dilemma. She wanted to preserve her family while carving her unique path. After their initial hesitance, her family agreed to support her experiment for the upcoming Sunday dinner. Relief washed over her, yet doubts resurfaced like old friends. Would their dishes truly resonate? Would this undertaking strengthen their bonds or fracture them even further? As she immersed herself in preparation over the following days, Claudia confronted her culinary insecurities. She spent hours in the kitchen, testing flavors and refining her recipes, each triumph fueling her confidence while every setback sparked existential reflection. Those moments stirred her desire for acknowledgement, but they lashed her tighter to a fear of disappointing the very people she sought to impress. Would they see beauty in her transformations, or would they only detect betrayal in her creations? The morning approaches with a sense of urgency as Sunday looms closer. Claudia stands at a crossroads, poised to unveil her reinvention, yet anxiety grips her heart with an iron fist. Would the evening yield acceptance or resentment? She clutched her notebook tightly, its pages filled with dreams and fears, thoughts encased in ink.
The clamor of pots and pans filled her ears, resonating with the battle ahead. The real question echoed, would she summon the courage to truly evolve this Sunday, amidst the tender layers of tradition and innovation? As Claudia drew in a breath, her mind churned with anticipation. Soon she would face the dinner table again. This time, it would define what she was willing to fight for. The day of the dinner arrived, wrapped in a delicate shroud of tension. Claudia glanced at the clock as its hands ticked mercilessly toward the hour. Every tick sounded louder than her own heartbeat, each second a reminder of the impending confrontation. She had spent the last several days meticulously crafting dishes, experimenting with flavors that were both foreign and familiar. And yet, an unsettling conviction gnawed at her. What if none of it mattered?
Turning back to the kitchen, she organized her workspace one last time. Fresh herbs were lined up like soldiers, vibrant vegetables prepped and ready. The aroma of simmering sauces wafted through the air, a fragrant invitation to her family, but all she could smell was uncertainty. Would her family welcome this new experience, or would they cast it aside, leaving her to grapple with the aftermath? As guests began to gather around the table, Claudia felt the heaviness of eyes upon her. The kitchen felt claustrophobic, the cheerful chatter of her family creating an ironic contrast to the turmoil in her chest. She greeted them with a manufactured smile, trying to veil the storm brewing inside. "Are we digging into the classics tonight?" her father quipped, his tone light but laced with expectation. "Actually, I made something a little different," Claudia replied, enthusiasm trying to mask her fear. She summoned her resolve as she carried the first dish to the table, a coordinated of heirloom tomatoes tossed in a honey basil vinaigrette atop a creamy burrata. Her family sampled the dish, and the moment stretched long in her mind. The silence spoke volumes, and Claudia held her breath, willing their taste buds to echo with approval. Her mother's brow furrowed slightly as she chewed, while her father's gaze darted from the plate to her, weighing the perceived novelty against the weight of tradition. "What do you think?" Claudia prodded, her voice trembling slightly. "It's different," her father responded, the word hanging heavily in the air. The critique felt like ice water splashed against her warm face. She had prepared for the challenge, but the reality shot straight to her heart. For a fleeting moment, panic gripped her. Perhaps she was wrong to try and reinvent what had always been. Perhaps her family was right. The prospect of disappointing them bore down on her like an oppressive weight. But with each fearful thought, a flicker of resolve ignited. Tradition should evolve. She knew this, and she had to believe in her vision.
"I want us to explore together," Claudia said, her voice steadying as she leaned into her shared history with them. "This dish honors our roots, but it also speaks to where we can go as a family. It's about connection, not disruption." The table buzzed with murmurs, her family digesting both the food and her words. Claudia remained vigilant, watching their reactions like a hawk. A moment of vulnerability surged within her. She had bared her culinary soul, each dish a fragment of her identity. What remained was the true test. Could they see the value in her interpretation? Each dish presented that night told a story. A zesty quinoa pilaf inspired by her grandmother's fried rice, a delicate fish paired with an undercurrent of coconut and lime that reminded her of the ocean summers spent with her mother. Each taste reinvigorated her hope and deepened her resolve. As the last plate was cleared away, Claudia felt the tension shift. Her family still hesitated, but she could sense more than skepticism in their eyes. Curiosity mingled with reflection. Did they perceive the spirit of their beloved tradition, wrapped in the fresh creativity of her culinary approach? Just as she found the moment to breathe, her father leaned forward, the corners of his mouth twitching with something that resembled a smile. "You know, maybe there's something special in embracing a little change." The weight in Claudia's chest partially lifted, yet a fresh layer of uncertainty unfurled within her. Had she crossed a threshold, or was she merely scratching the surface of this transformative journey? As the conversation deepened, she realized that acceptance was not a destination, but a path of understanding, both for her family and herself. With each shared story and laughter, she reinforced her belief in this journey, and yet questions loomed. What other revelations awaited as they continued to bridge their past and present? Was there more to uncover within her and her family? As Claudia retreated to the kitchen to clean up, a sense of determination enveloped her. She wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Would her family continue to embrace this rebirth of tradition and innovation, or would there be friction yet to come? The night was still young, and with it lingered the intoxicating taste of possibilities. Claudia stood in her kitchen, bathed in the warm glow of the morning sun that poured through the window. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped her, yet it was the brewing hope within her that truly invigorated her spirit. The family dinner had been a revelation, a starting point for both her culinary exploration and her relationship with her family. They had embarked on this journey together, each recipe marking a step towards bridging the divide that had haunted her. That week, Claudia had established herself as a creator, combining flavors both old and new.
She found herself in a rhythm, testing dishes that echoed her family's cherished tastes while inviting vibrant, healthful elements. Each chop of the knife, each sprinkle of seasoning felt like a declaration. She was simultaneously respecting the past and demanding a future where both health and tradition thrived. As the weekend approached, Claudia felt an exhilarating anticipation. She picked up her phone and quickly invited her family for yet another Sunday evening gathering. She sensed their hesitation, but this time that familiar knot in her stomach was woven with excitement rather than anxiety. They had stepped into her world once. Now it was her chance to assure them that transformation was a celebration, not a betrayal. The night of the dinner arrived, and the table was set not just for food, but for conversation and openness. Claudia placed her newest creations before her family, a rainbow stir-fry featuring vibrant vegetables, a hearty lentil stew infused with spices, and a comforting quinoa bake blended with familiar herbs from her family's traditional recipes. She knew they would notice. She knew they would engage in thoughtful dialogue, perhaps even challenge her choices. As they gathered around the table, the air brimmed with warmth. Claudia felt the familiar thrill of nervous energy coursing through her veins. Her father's perceptive gaze lingered on the dishes, and her mother's gentle smile fueled her confidence. "Welcome back to the culinary adventure," Claudia announced, attempting to inject levity into the moment. "Let's dig in. We've got a range of colors and flavors to explore tonight." Forks clinked against plates, and the room filled with cautious buzz as they sampled her creations. The stirring of flavors sparked conversation. Tales spilled forth from her family, reviving memories tied to old recipes that now harmonized with the new. "Claudia, this stew might just rival Grandma's," her cousin Ethan remarked, a cheeky grin spreading across his face. Claudia felt a weight lift. Her ambitions were taking root in a fertile ground. Her mother spoke next, enthusiasm lighting up her eyes. "I love the freshness. It brings a new energy." The comments piled up, positive and constructive, matching flavors to stories and memories. With pride swelling in her chest, Claudia chewed on her words before speaking. "This isn't just about food," she said, her voice steady. "It's about reshaping how we gather and share. We are evolving while honoring our roots. We can carry those moments forward in new forms." "Exactly," replied her father, beaming with unexpected warmth. "You've shown us that traditions can adapt and grow, not just remain in the past. It's beautiful, actually." The pride radiating from his face anchored Claudia firmly in her purpose. As dishes emptied, laughter bubbled, a blend of appreciation and connections rekindled. The transition from doubt to acceptance shimmered in the air, and Claudia felt her own evolution mirrored in her family's embrace of change. This simple act of shared meals had reshaped their identity as a family, forging deeper ties in the process. Even after dessert, an innovative fruit tart with an almond crust, new conversations emerged. They began brainstorming meal ideas together, an exciting back and forth that saw Claudia's vision taking hold. Her fear had transformed into solid confidence. She was not only a hostess, but a facilitator of memories, both old and new. As the evening wound down, Claudia watched as her family lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth of togetherness they had cultivated that night. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Not only had she unearthed her unique voice, but she had also proven that it was possible to weave a new tapestry of tradition that enhanced their familial bonds. In that moment, Claudia understood the journey had just begun. She envisioned future dinners filled with laughter, new flavors, and more stories shared, eager to further explore the balance of their heritage and her aspirations. With a smile, she pointed to her notebook resting on the counter, a treasure trove of new ideas waiting to be tested. No longer entangled in fear, Claudia stood firm in her identity, anchored by newfound recognition from her family. She had achieved a level of personal growth that equipped her to embrace both the past that shaped her and the future she desired to create. This was her moment, her achievement, a profound transformation unfolding before her, radiating confidence, exemplifying resilience. With a spark ignited within and the love of her family as newfound fuel, Claudia realized that her culinary journey was just the beginning. The path ahead glimmered with promise, the horizon bright with possibility. It was time to embrace every delicious moment. Now, more than ever, you need to subscribe to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories of personal transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us bring more uplifting content to light. Comment below your thoughts and reactions about Claudia's journey. What moments resonated with you? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support our mission of spreading stories of overcoming challenges.